And chiefly, we really want to use this meeting to talk politics about the way forward for our very important campaign. And we are at a hugely important crossroads at the moment, as everybody knows. Our movement has suffered a huge defeat with the general election first, and then of course the election of Keir Starmer as a leader. In part, we believe, I don't know if everybody believes it, this was self-inflicted, this defeat. We have repeatedly, that's the reason we were formed actually, we've repeatedly pointed out the dangers of the decision by the Corbyn leadership to try and reach some kind of deal, some kind of unity with the right. We called it a campaign of an attempt to appease the right, which was futile in our view right from the start. So we need to discuss the problems we've encountered in the last 5 years, the mistakes our movement has made, and what we have to do now, how we have to organize now to basically cohere the left, fight back against the next witch hunt, it's an ongoing one, isn't it? It goes through waves, but there will be potentially more to come under Keir Starmer. And I'm very happy to introduce our first speaker, who's Graham Bash, from the Steering Committee of Labour Against the Witch Hunt, and has all sorts of other titles as well. But I think he wants to mention them himself. Go ahead.
Well, comrades, a brief self-introduction. I have been a party member for 51 years. I'm Jewish. Political officer for Jewish Voice for Labour. I'm on the National Committee of the Labour Representation Committee, Editorial Board of Labour Briefing, and Steering Committee of Labour Against the Witch Hunt. But this evening, I can speak only for myself. At meeting after meeting in the last 3 years, I argued that the Labour Party witch hunt against the left would not stop until it had achieved its main target. That Jackie, Ken, Mark Wadsworth, Chris Williamson were just collateral damage, and this wouldn't stop unless and until Jeremy Corbyn was overthrown. Well, I got that wrong, didn't I? Jeremy's gone, but the witch hunt continues. Suspensions, investigations, and expulsions are continuing. Now, we don't yet know the full scale of this, nor the timing, but we should proceed on the assumption that this will not stop unless and until the Labour left has been destroyed, either by expulsion, silencing us by intimidation and fear, or by a mass exodus of our members. Now, can Labour Against the Witch Hunt, therefore, quietly dissolve on the basis that it's no longer needed? In your dreams. On the contrary, LAW has been quiet lately, far too quiet, and we need to get back on the road quickly and effectively. Any doubts that we may have had have been exploded by the leaked Labour Party report. Now, we always knew that we on the left were fighting the Parliamentary Labour Party and the party machinery, but even we, many of us hard-bitten activists, have been taken aback by the scale of what has been revealed. These party officials, a party within a party, at war with the membership, with the democratically elected leadership, aiming and indeed succeeding in destroying the possibility of a socialist Labour government, a chance of a lifetime, attacking us with appalling sexist, racist, disablest language. It was a declaration of war, class war against our movement, and it is unforgivable. Now, we warned in these last few years how sinister the, quotes, anti-Semitism witch hunt was, how it separated anti-Semitism from all other forms of racism and obscured the racism against Black and Asians, which structurally excluded them from power in society and within our party. And if you've got any doubts about the effects of racism in our party, look at the racist abuse in the report against Diane Abbott and so many others. We warned how it was used to conflate anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism and silence criticism of the state of Israel and advocacy for Palestinian rights, and how it would be used to close down discussion on key historical issues. Party members were being disciplined for talking about history, for examining the historical role of some Jews at some places, at some times in the slave trade, for discussing the IHRA agreement reached by some Zionists in Germany and in the United States, which led to the breaking of the anti-Hitler economic boycott. Now,
Graham, just a second. Graham, can I interrupt you? Your screen is really shaking, which is quite, okay. If you could stay with me. Sorry.
Complex historical issues, and we don't have to agree. But to ban discussion about our histories led and leads to the outlawing of thought and ultimately to the burning of books, another lesson from history. And I said this, a warning last year. Above all, I believe, as someone who has experienced anti-Semitism, it hinders the fight against anti-Semitism itself. This is particularly odious, the way false allegations of anti-Semitism are being used for factional interest. It is an abuse of the memory of all victims of anti-Semitism and racism. And if we do not put an end to this, it will come back to haunt us. Well, it's done just that. The report shows how real cases of sometimes appalling anti-Semitism were often ignored or sidelined, while priority and publicity was given to fighting those on the left, often Jewish, often black, sometimes both, who were falsely accused. Now, let me say this now for the avoidance of any doubt. It is not and never has been our case that there is and was no anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. Of course there is. The Labour Party at its peak under Corbyn had 600,000 members. It is part of society, the best part of society, but part of society nonetheless. Now, of course there were pockets of anti-Semitism, and some of these are revealed in the report. And such cases have to be dealt with after due process, usually by education and training, but in some cases by suspension and expulsion. But the extent of anti-Semitism was grossly distorted and exaggerated, and allegations of anti-Semitism were used by those intent on a civil war against the party, the leadership and the members. Now, I don't know whether these revelations will, for a time, put a brake on the witch hunt. It is possible, but don't rely on it. We need to be on red alert. We need to keep an updated record of all those investigated, suspended and expelled. But our response has to be, above all, a political response. Firstly, patiently explain what the political objective of the witch hunt is, which is to destroy the Labour Party as a force for fundamental socialist transformation. The argument for us on that basis is now an open goal. Secondly, join with all others fighting this sinister attack. Help build the broadest united front. Already in the last 24 hours, hundreds of Unison members have declared in a very forceful statement against the appalling revelations in the report. And even the Socialist Campaign Group has made an excellent declaration, as John Trickett and Ian Lavery wrote in Tribune. First, the report needs to be published officially by the Labour Party, it says. It will almost certainly be requested by the IHRA, so the party should get out in front and submit it. Secondly, we need an emergency NEC meeting to discuss its contents. Thirdly, that meeting must establish a transparent process to investigate the conduct alleged in the leaked document with terms of reference set by NEC officers. Fourth, this process must produce a report available to the public, not tucked away in a drawer, which restores faith amongst Labour Party members in the practices of our party. The report must be presented to both the NEC and to party conference itself. After this week's revelations, there can be no going back. We must never again allow a permanent aristocracy of party managers to overrule democratic decisions. We must never again allow our members and their efforts to be treated with such contempt. And then with this, for all socialists in the Labour Party, there is one final lesson. Don't let this demoralise you. Stay in the party and seek justice. As this document makes clear, the very worst elements of our party would only be too happy for you to leave. And that's my message, if there is one above all tonight, which I endorse. Don't leave, organise.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Jackie Walker, who has been on the receiving end of the witch hunt almost from the beginning, and it's dragged on and on and on. And we can see from the report actually how her case has been deliberately delayed in order to get Tony Greenstein and Mark Wadsworth out first. So we're very happy and proud to have her on our panel.
Thank you. I'm just going to correct you though. I don't think I was almost first. I was pretty much first, I think. And I think I've been pretty much the first one who actually started campaigning against it. And that's a load. That's a load on your shoulders. And I have to say, and I do understand Graham's comment about, you know, that law needs to step up and do more and see more. But let's not forget what the last 6 months have been for most of us. It's been the most excruciating, busy time. And I think just the fact that we are still here and still growing is something to actually commend. Of course, we still need LAW. I'm afraid one of the many things that I disagreed with Graham about, even before the election, was that somehow the witch hunt would stop. One thing I've learned about this lobby group is nothing stops them until their adversaries are totally annihilated and disappear. Why should they stop? It's been a very successful tactic. They've got no reason to stop at all. And I think what we will see is it now getting increasingly worse. I'll come back to that in a minute. I think, yes, I felt, I wasn't shocked, but I would say more, I was surprised at the viciousness and in a way the childishness of the abuse and how they were allowed to do this with no kind of management around them. And so I think there actually in this report, there are a lot of questions to ask. And one thing was, there are people who should have had some responsibility in this. There were questions being asked by the NEC about what they were doing, and they were allowed to be around in a little circle of people, twiddling their thumbs. They literally say, we have to look as if we're working, and nothing happened to these people. So I think there are other issues here. And I also think that it would be useful at some point, obviously in a redacted form, for a more detailed critique of this report to be made by law. So not such a sort of, if you like, a sort of rhetorical response, but a critical response. And I'll give you some reasons for that. From what I hear, and I don't know, I haven't been able to authenticate, this report was written by somebody from the Momentum team. And if you look at it, this has very much got the Momentum style, the House style on it. So for example, there are certain people who were disciplined for anti-Semitism, but have since, if you like, being taken on by the Momentum fold. Their cases were not highlighted within the report in any real way. And also, I'm going to refer, because it's easier for data protection for me to refer to my case, for example. It was absolutely extraordinary that they actually published in this report a comment by somebody who is not an expert in any particular way, certainly not in Caribbean history or, you know, the Jews in the Caribbean, but they published it. And this person actually was talking about my distant Jewish ancestry. Well, it's news to me that my father is a distant relative, you know, but there you go. And apart from that, there had been another report submitted to the Labour Party by one of the primary experts, in fact, the global expert in Black Judaic studies. And for some reason, which I suspect is a political one, they chose to highlight this other comments about me, which raised all sorts of false bogeymen. And I'm just talking about in my case. And I think those fallacies within the report need to be gone through in more fine detail, including the fact that many people that I know complained about anti-Semitism from the right of the party. They complained about anti-Zionist Jews being called capos, being said that they weren't Jews. There is nowhere in the report that includes any reference to the anti-Semitism that came from the right of the party. And we really need to highlight that. Of course, you know, we've already had the threats online, the threats that anybody who's published this report is going to get a court case in front of them. And I think one thing we should be thinking of doing, and I think we should be thinking of doing it now, in any case, and it's probably something we should have been doing before, is to start thinking more seriously of raising a battle fund, if you like, because I think going forward, we are really going to need it. And we have friends and comrades who we could call on to help us to do that. Of course, the calls for unity are rubbish. I mean, it's just nonsense. There is not going to be unity. What they want is quiescence from us so that we continue our door knocking. One thing I want to highlight, perhaps even more than Graham has done, is the issue of race. I think this shows exactly this hierarchy of racism within the Labour Party that I have been talking about. Now, I just want any of you to imagine that a set of employed staff had been talking about a Jewish MP in the same way that they talked about Diane Abbott, and just consider what would be happening to them now. Consider what would be happening to them now, because I promise you, they would already have been suspended. And the response by Black members is very clear and very angry. And I think that's something we should actually be speaking about. So what I would say is we really, really need to step up our, if you like, our practical response to this, in the expectation that things are actually going to get worse for the left, and that the work of LAW is not even started yet. We're now going to be in the nitty-gritty of things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Jackie is, just like myself, actually on the organizing group of Labour Against the Witchhunt, which is also part of the struggle to fight against the right in the Labour Party, and has just made a commitment to orient towards the Labour Party very, very clearly, because we are seeing, unfortunately, a lot of people being very demoralized with what happened and dropping out of the Labour Party. We believe that, sadly, that mostly leads to atomization and to people becoming very depoliticized. So we are making a conscious effort to try and win those people back so we can actually fight together in the Labour Party against the right, because it is open class warfare at the moment. Our next speaker is Moshe Machover. We're very glad to have him with us, expert on Middle Eastern politics, founder of Matzfen, honorary president of Labour Against the Witchhunt, and many other things, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you live long, you accumulate all sorts of things. Some things that you want and some things that you don't. Well, I want to make a few points. First of all, there are two aspects to this report that is being leaked. First of all, on one side, there is the depravity of those who were supposed to work for the Labour Party at the very top of the administration of the Labour Party for high salaries. The absolute moral depravity of these people who were treacherously working against the party, not just against individual, against the leader, but in order to be able to demote, to get rid of the leader they didn't like, they were prepared to actually work for the party not to do well in the election. And it is perhaps due to them that the party did not actually win the 2017 election outright. It did very well, much better than they wanted, much better than they expected. But they admittedly, they admit working against the party in the election. But on the other hand, politically, if you look at the politics that is reflected in this report, and I think, you know, this may be may reinforce the suspicion that has been raised that it is from some kind of momentum, leadership of momentum direction. That they don't question at all the motivation for the accusations of anti-Semitism, the validity, the bona fides, the good faith of those accusations. They take these accusations as valid. And in fact, the irony of this report is that it highlights the fact that the Corbyn leadership, probably advised by people not distant from momentum, was prepared to eat out of the hand of the Zionist lobby. And I stress Zionist lobby, not Jewish lobby, Zionist lobby. You should make the distinction between Zionism and Jewishness. I mean, these were Israel worshippers who were allowed to dictate who should be targeted in the Labour Party. And the complaint of the report is that the wicked bureaucrats, and they are wicked, prevented the Labour leadership to act according to what they understood to be the wishes of those who outside forces who were trying to dictate the expulsions and suspensions. They sabotaged it for their own purpose in order to make it look that it's the leadership who is preventing dealing with these cases. But the leadership actually wanted to follow the advice of the wicked advisors. The next point that I want to make is that concerning my case, which I bring up because data protection doesn't prevent me from doing it, and because I think it is very indicative. After all, I have the privilege of having a whole section of the report dedicated to my case. The thing that brought about, that triggered the complaint by an anonymous complainer, by some alligator who alleged anti-Semitism and all sorts of other things against me, was an article that was published by Labour Party Marxists under the title "Anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. It doesn't equal anti-Semitism." Actually, this was a reprint of an article that I had written before I ever joined the Labour Party. few months before I joined the Labour Party. It was in the spring of 2017. And this article, in fact, is an edited version of a talk that I gave I think in May of 2017. I only joined the party or rejoined it in September. So that was the occasion for the complaint was something that I had written before. And they finally expelled me for allegedly supporting the organization that reprinted my article that had been not written even for them. Anyway, I mean, you will see, if you read this section of the report, you will see that wriggling, that how they are trying to find some excuse to expel me. But the original title of the article, and I think this is something that I want to highlight, was not anti-Zionism doesn't equal anti-Semitism. This was the title that was given to it by the people who reprinted it, Labour Party Marxists. The original title was "Do not apologize, attack." And I think this should be our slogan and our tactic or strategy even. Don't apologize. Apologies for doing something right is not a clever tactic. We should go on the counterattack again. In fact, I would like to republish the article, the original article that was published, you know, in the spring of 2017. I think it is completely topical. One of the things that in sense, again, an irony, if you read the report, you will see that they claim that some Jewish members found it offensive that in this article I quoted Heydrich. Heydrich was a high-ranking Nazi officer in the SS and one of the architects of the Holocaust. He was the person who convened the Wannsee conference, in which the mechanics of the extermination of the Jewish people was planned in technical detail. But that was much later. That was in 1942, in the winter of 41-42. But the quotation that I quote from Heydrich, and which the alligators found offensive, was not a quotation in which I actually supported what Heydrich is saying. And this is the irony. I quoted Heydrich in order to denounce what he is saying. And what is he saying? He's complimenting Zionism in this. So obviously people who are wedded to Zionism, right or wrong, will find this offensive, that a person like Heydrich is complimenting Zionism, but he's giving Zionism a compliment. It says we agree with the Zionists that the Jews of Germany are not Germans. They are separate people. Jewishness is not a religion. It is a separate nation and race. And this is what the Zionists believe, and this is what he says. So they found it offensive that I quoted Heydrich in order to denounce what he's saying. This is the kind of thing that we have to deal with. Now, the last point I want to make, yes, I agree that the witch hunt will not stop, and it will not stop for a very valid political reason. I've made this point on many occasions. The witch hunt, the campaign against the alleged anti-Semitism in the Labour Party comes from 3 different directions and for different motives. One of the motives was to get rid of Jeremy Corbyn. But another important cause for this Witchhunt, and one of its aims, is to make the Labour Party compliant with imperialist foreign policy.
Yeah.
That is to say that opposition to Israel is not acceptable, not because these people who direct this campaign necessarily like Israel or care about Jews or not. It is because Israel is a prime ally of the United States in the Middle East and beyond the Middle East. And in order to be in line, to continue to support the policy of the leading imperialist power, the dominant, the hegemonic imperialist power, the United States, Britain has to fall in line in being nice to Israel. This is becoming more and more difficult because if you follow what is happening in Israeli politics, it is going from extreme right to more extreme right. It is going, to in terms of its corruption. Simple corruption is the stench is unbelievable. It is becoming more and more difficult to support this colonizing state, the Zionist enterprise of colonization. And because of this, the campaign against people who are opposed to Israeli expansionism, to Zionist colonization, and who support the rights of the Palestinian people, both as a people and as individuals, the campaign against those supporters of Palestinian rights will get more and more shrill and more extreme. What do we have to do in face of this? As I said in the original article years ago, don't apologize, attack. Let them try to denounce what we are saying. If people read the article that I wrote in that paper in 2017, they will see what kind of truth these enemies of the people, enemies of the left, enemies of justice are up to. Yeah, just a few brief points. First of all, the IHRA definition, it's not only faulty in what it says, it is obviously faulty in what it doesn't say, and it doesn't say the obvious. I mean, surely anti-Semitism is primarily hatred against Jews and discrimination against Jews, and this is not in the definition. If you read the definition, hatred of Jews and discrimination against Jews is not mentioned. Israel is mentioned a lot. Yes. Israel is mentioned a lot, but not what anti-Semitism is really all about. So, I mean, it's a rubbish definition, completely useless, and not useless to the enemies of truth. It's useless as a would-be definition. The second remark I want to make is that this idea of creating a sort of substitute Labour Party, or a broad left substitute for a Labour Party, this is an idea that is being tried and failed for an obvious reason, because what is proposed there is not a revolutionary party for which there is room in Britain, because it will not actually define itself purely in electoral terms, but a broad left, a sort of Labour Party improved version has no chance, much less than in Greece or in Spain, because of the electoral system. In the first past the post, such a kind of new Labour Party will have to be focused on elections, and in the system of elections that we have here, this is not viable. The third brief remark is don't drop out of the Labour Party. If you think you need to say goodbye, make it a battle. Do it in a fighting way. The worst form of retreat is a sort of retreat of individuals, unorganized and without a battle. If you want, if you've had it up to here in the Labour Party, make them throw you out on their false excuses. Make it in a way that exposes the enemies of the left in the Labour Party. Don't just say goodbye. Stop paying your dues. I would prefer people to stay in the Labour Party and to fight inside, because it's a battle worth fighting. But if you don't have the wish to do it, or if you've had enough and then leave, but leave fighting. Don't just leave quietly.
Thanks, Moshe. Bringing Graham in next.
Well, comrades may think that raising these broader issues are not centrally connected to fighting the witch hunt. Well, they are, because unless we get these broader issues right, we cannot fight the witch hunt. Now, let me say, as a party member all these years, being a member of the Labour Party has never, ever just been about what we do in our constituencies. I'm in the Labour Party because of its connection with the trade union movement, and because it is through the Labour Party, and at this stage through the Labour Party alone, that we can build a political expression of the broader Labour movement and the forces of resistance. So it isn't just what we do in the Labour Party, and our first job, after what I agree absolutely is a catastrophic defeat, is to rebuild the forces of resistance. And we do that through our grassroots movements, in the trade union movement, wherever we are. And we do it in a context where politics has fundamentally changed, in a period of growing climate crisis, of the pandemic, which has changed our lives fundamentally. And we're having to actually even do our politics in different ways. So if anyone says, are we just fighting in the Labour Party? Then my answer is no. But that's been my answer for the last 51 years. Anyone who thinks you just go along to your ward meeting or your GC, just do that, and think that that is unconnected to rebuilding our movement from the base, well, you're living in a dreamland. And the problem that we had with Jeremy was this, that we had the most left-wing, and it was, John, the most left-wing leadership in Labour's history at a time of a period of defeat for the Labour movement. Since the miners' strike, our movement has been in decline. And that was the critical contradiction at the root of what we were fighting for. So we've got to get it right. Our tasks are, one, to rebuild the resistance, and secondly, to rebuild the left. Totally unfit for purpose when sections of the left in the Momentum leadership, which actually went over to the other side and engaged in the witch hunt. So the comrade, I think it was it Steve Burgess who talked about NEC unity? I agree very much that we've got to actually achieve unity, but there are certain red lines as well. And if sections of the left insist, for instance, in having John Landsman on a left slate, then we decline. We say, thank you very much, but no, we will decline, and we will actually build as great as left unity as is possible. in the circumstances. Now, just a very, very few things. Gunter, I've heard it all before, comrade. Every little group that was the new left get together, well, it's like herding cats, comrade. It ain't going to happen. And we've actually got to recognise that still, even though members are leaving the Labour Party, where you've got 80,000 voting for Bergen, you've got a membership still of several 100,000. Frankly, you couldn't fill the local church hall with all the left put together, and have no illusions on this. Now, I do resent what Tony said about the JVL, and I don't always agree with the JVL, just as I don't always agree with any organisation I've ever been part of. But come off it, Tony. The JVL was actually one of those major forces that was fighting the witch hunt, telling the truth, speaking truth to power. And I think that was really unfair to castigate the JVL for that reason. Just on one thing, by the way, I'm not going to tell the LLA what to do because I'm not centrally involved in it. But I always think that the LRC had a good position on Labour Party membership. We said that the LRC is open to all, except for those who stand candidates against Labour. The JVL actually allows associate membership for non-Labour Party members, or it's supporting membership, I can't remember the exact term. And I think a degree of flexibility is reasonable there. But the central question is rebuilding from the roots, and only then can we even stand a chance of reversing this historic defeat that we've suffered. But there's no point in being demoralised, because the alternative is just to die politically. And the choice, if you've got a choice between dying politically and fighting heroically against the odds, well, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? So we resist and we rebuild in conditions which are not of our making, but that's where we're at.
Thanks, Graham. Jackie?
Thanks very much. I mean, if you're thinking about leaving, then as Moshe says, I mean, stay in the party, speak out, speak loud, and make them throw you out, for goodness sake. Whereas the sense of just leaving and making it easy for them. You know, look at the number of us who stayed there, not for 6 months or a year, but for 2 years and more, many people, and just fought and fought and fought. Because what it does is it gives a voice to others, and it enables you to say things that other people are not able to say. Because actually, what we need to be on the left, on the radical left, is we need to be the opposition. Labour, in terms of the leadership of Keir Starmer, can no longer be the real opposition. And we see that in the way he's responding at the moment to the virus and actually to everything. He is not a real opposition. We are the opposition, and we need to act as if we're the opposition. And in terms of momentum, I'm sorry, you know, I just want to say, I know we've got this forward momentum thing going on, but I think momentum is so deeply corrupt at this point that it actually needs to go. It actually needs to totally go before we can really rebuild something. And I think that nothing new, nothing vigorous, nothing healthy can come of it. So what I would say is we need to be the opposition. We need to be the opposition both inside the party and outside the party, speaking out for proper socialist ideas. I love the point, by the way, and I think it's really important, and this is what I mean about we need to have a really considered response to this report, because it's nonsense that this is an aberration. Their behaviour is not an aberration. This is a culture that has been deep within the Labour Party, and certainly deep within the Labour Party since I've known the Labour Party. And certainly the racism within the Labour Party against people of colour, this is not an aberration. I just want to actually remind people that I think it was in 1968 that the Labour Party in London, in certain boroughs, were running official race bars against black people getting council housing. And there are many, many examples of this. And I think apart from that, in terms of their, I mean, I love what Moshe called it, the moral depravity. The moral depravity I have been plain to see from Blair onwards. This is not an aberration, and we need to say that very strongly. This is the state of the Labour Party. This is the corruption within the Labour Party, and the left has been standing out against this corruption. And if you like, that becomes part of our moral crusade.
Thank you, comrade. Moshe next.
No, thank you. I just want to repeat what I said before. Don't just leave quietly. Stay in, fight. Fight without fear or favor. If you get expelled, let them take the blame. Don't just disappear. Stay. And as somebody said, you know, this is a battle. You know that in war, soldiers, if you ask them, why do you fight? They don't fight for king, they don't fight for country, they fight because they don't want to desert their comrades. So don't desert your comrades. And as one of the participants said, I've got comrades in this CLP. I don't think I should desert them. Don't desert, fight.
Thank you, comrade. Before bringing Graham and before people start leaving, I just want to say a couple of things. Moving forward, I think it was quite a good discussion about some of the campaigns we can fight around, the 10 pledges, the report. Definitely agree, we have to look far deeper into it. But also wanted to say that we're gonna have a real meeting as soon as the lockdown is over, because this kind of works, but it kind of doesn't. It's really strange. You don't have the same interaction that we have in a real meeting, and certainly for elections or whatever, it would be very bad to do this online. Also, we're setting up a Facebook group for all law members. There is another Facebook group, but that is full of infiltrators, I would have thought. And so we're setting up a separate Facebook group just for law members, and everybody will get an invite for that. So thank you very much. Graham comes.
Just two or three specific points and then a general point. Look, I wasn't at the PSC AGM. I've never been to one. So I can't really say what happened. But from what you say, Tony's resolution said, I guess I may have voted the same way as Tony, but I don't know. JVL is a broad organisation where we have differences like we do in every organisation. But this idea about JVL claiming special authority, I think it's something different. I think it's that perhaps those of us who are Jewish on the left have a particular responsibility to speak out. For many years, I don't think anybody on the left even knew I was Jewish. It didn't come up. And you know what? I've come out as a Jewish socialist, basically because the Zionists made me into that. I could not accept that the state of Israel and the Zionists spoke for me and what my history of being Jewish had done for me, because I was brought up on the lessons of fighting the fascists at Cable Street. And I was brought up on some of the better traditions of Jewish socialism. And to me, that's what it meant, but it didn't really matter until the Zionists tried to speak for me. And I then realized I had a particular responsibility to speak out. It is far, far more difficult for me to be attacked as an anti-Semite if I do so. I have a certain privilege in that sense, and I will use that for the force of internationalism, which I actually hope that we are all part of an international movement. So, you know, I think we've got a special responsibility. And overall, I think the JVL has played a magnificent role in fighting this false narrative. And I say it again, of course there's anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. And I don't even diminish the fact, but it is nothing like has been said. It has been distorted and exaggerated. But above all, and this is the crucial thing, it has made invisible the real racism in our society and in our party against black people and against Asians. It has gone off the agenda. And after what has happened with Grenfell, after what has happened with Windrush, after what is happening in this pandemic today, I think that is shameful. Now, my last thing is the comrade, the last person who spoke, who said, stop apologising. I totally agree. Someone asked me, I spoke a day or 2 days after the election, after I picked myself up from the floor. I think I forget where it was. And someone asked me, what's the lesson that we can learn from the election? And I said, let's take a leaf out of Boris Johnson's book. When he had internal opponents, he sacked them. He got rid of them from his party. And I said, what did we do? We apologised. We apologised to those who were attacking us. And that is a bitter lesson to learn. And I think it's one we have to learn as we attempt to build the resistance and rebuild the left on fundamentally different foundations, reversing that top-down approach, the bureaucratic approach, which has so disfigured the left. That has got a material base, and that material base is the lack of pressure from below because of the defeats. And it's a really, really long-term task we have, which is to rebuild the movement. It's really a huge task, and we cannot underestimate the scale of it. But unless we face up to that reality, we're not even going to get past stage one. So to fight the witch hunt, we have to rebuild our movement.
Thank you very much, Graham. Having said that, you were the last speaker. Actually, somebody raised their hand at the last minute, and it's our comrade Mehmood Mirza, and I think he's really important to hear from him. Not only because he's been a long-standing, long-standing member of Labour Against the Witch Hunt, but also because he has been appallingly treated by the Labour bureaucracy. He has been suspended in the middle of the campaign to stand for the NEC and without an investigation. So I think it's very important that we hear from him, and we're very glad to have him. Here we go.
Yeah, thank you, comrades, giving me the opportunity to speak. Basically, there is, calls for people leaving in, that everybody's hearing. I was a membership secretary in my CLP, so people still have my email address, and people have been sending me emails, and they wanted to leave. But I would say, we're not going to be agree with all on one, all little organization, but we can be united like LRC and JVL. Well, you can have differences, but for the sake of the left slate, we can agree like we used to do that. But if we have a huge membership, and still the membership is still there. It's not everybody is leaving, but we can organize. There's going to be another election, NEC election is coming. We can keep the control of NEC, and we need to organize under, I think we got a good platform for Labour Left Alliance. I will encourage, because a lot of people are disfranchising themselves from the momentum at the moment. I think we need to take the membership of the momentum on board as well. We just, keep the managing director out, and there are good people in momentum. Like we had a good organization in momentum. We are affiliated with the Left Alliance, so we need to take this broad left. We need to build up a broad left alliance, and I think the Labour Left Alliance have somehow proved themselves, because I got the nominations because I was on the panel of Labour Left Alliance. I secured 75 nominations. Joe Bird secured the 117 something nomination because she was on the panel of Labour Left Alliance, and people was not happy to go ahead with momentum. So I think that we got a good opportunity coming, and we need to look forward towards the Labour Left Alliance. And we can, obviously, we cannot be agreed on every, every little organization have their own manifesto on that. But I think JPL is doing a great job, and they are fighting at the front against the smears on Labour Party members. So we need to be united. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, comrade. Just to wind up now, and following on from what Mehmood says, I think 6 or 7 Momentum branches have joined the Labour Left Alliance, which I think is a better way of remaking momentum, if you like. I am, just like Jackie, I'm very skeptical that Forward Momentum has any forward momentum, or that it can make a real difference to what's going on in the struggle there. At least it contacted the database of John Landsman. He owns it personally. So it would be very difficult for people to take over that dinosaur of an organization. But leaving that aside, I've just put it in the chat that the Labour Left Alliance is trying to organize weekly webinars in the coming period over a number of issues. And perhaps we can pool our forces with the comrades as well, rather than having, maybe we have two meetings a week. It adds up a little bit. But I think it would be very good to keep in touch in this period, which can be very tough on comrades individually and politically, to be so isolated. So as I said, we're setting up a Facebook group for all law members, and we'll look in your inbox for the invite. Look in your inbox for the invite for our proper meeting once the lockdown is over. And I'm looking forward to seeing comrades for real very soon. Okay. See you all very soon. Bye.